Next team we're going to talk about is the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic had the 8th seed last season. They finished 33 and 40, 7 games below 500. They lost to the Bucks 4-1, and it seems like for the past 2 seasons they tend to steal a game in game one. But for me, it's just where do they go next? They have a collection of vets and Vucevic and Fournier and Aaron Gordon, if you can classify him as a vet, because he's been in the league for a
Forever, right?
while. For a while, Terrence Ross is there as well. Then they have some young players like they took a chance on Markel Fultz. They drafted Cole Anthony. They signed Dwayne Bacon. Mo Bamba's still there. You can also classify Gordon as that young player as well, even though I think he's like in the middle. But yeah, I mean, guys who left, Wesley Wundu left to Dallas. He was a pretty good role player for them last season. He came into his own in the second half of the year. And DJ Augustine, they replaced him with Cole Anthony, who now will come off the bench in that guard spot. Al-Farouq Aminu's still injured. Steve Clifford is a pretty good coach. He tends to get the best out of his teams. He did it in Charlotte and then in Orlando for the past 2 years. But in a more competitive Eastern Conference, I just don't see a scenario where the Orlando Magic will make the playoffs, especially after losing Jonathan Isaac, who's out for the year. We're the Magic, in my opinion, are counting on Markel Fultz to take a big leap because they
And Mo Bamba.
yeah, they did. And Mo Bamba, who knows where he's at in his development, but they took a little bit of a risk on Markel Fultz, which really wasn't a risk at all. I think it was they traded like a second round pick. They gave nothing up for Markel Fultz to see what he could become. And he's been solid thus far, but the Magic are really hoping that he can be even more than that and he can possibly blossom into an all-star. Last year was technically his rookie season. But yeah, I just don't know where do they go next. Do they tear the whole thing up? Do they rebuild? Like, where do you go next? It seems like they're kind of stuck in no man's land.
I think I think the obvious answer should be rebuild. I don't think they're good enough to compete. I think they have a bunch of guys that are good at one thing, but there's just not enough. Like, you just don't know. That roster is in no man's land. I think Vucevic deserves a better position. I think he should be on a good spot, a good team, a good playoff team. I think they should ship him. He's around that. I think he's like 30, so it's about time. His contract's pretty big. It's about time to get him out. I think Evan Fournier is going to be what he's going to be. I think you should also ship him. I think 3 highlights, Mo Bamba. Well, 4, I'm sorry. Mo Bamba, Jonathan Isaac, Markel Fultz, and now you drafted Cole Anthony. I think those should be the guys you should be trying to build around moving forward. Those are your young pieces. Those are your young assets. I think Aaron Gordon is young, but I think we've already seen what he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be better than what he is at this point in his career. Terrence Ross, another guy who's like a Spencer Dinwiddie or like a Dennis Shore. He's going to give you that 13, 14 off the bench. He's just, I think one game he had like 30. He had 0 assists, 0 rebounds. He's just going to score. So that's another guy you should get off the books. I think this team is in a position where you should take the right path and tank. Well, not even tank because I don't, but rebuild, because you have a group of young guys and you have a group of veterans that you can get good value for if you don't sit and wait on it. So I think Steve Clifford, I think he's a guy who you can still keep and he can still develop the young guys. But the veterans, you got to get them out of there for some good first round pick, second round. I think Vucevic is definitely worth a lottery pick. I think Fournier is worth a late first rounder. And in this draft coming up, a late first rounder can be a star. So I think that's the direction they should go in.
I mean, Dwayne Bacon is there too. I think he has a lot of potential coming from
Yeah,
Charlotte.
as much as I like Steve Clifford as a coach, they just strike me as a team on the outside looking in because they didn't improve at all this offseason in my eyes. Like, in fact, I think they got a little bit worse with that John Isaac injury. He was such an instrumental part of that team last year, and to lose him for the season changes the outlook of what they're going to be. I know a perfect spot for Nick Vucevic up in Boston. They need a center. He would fit perfectly, and the Celtics have assets. Why not? Start that rebuild, because right now they're in what I like to call basketball purgatory. And it's a place that you don't easily escape if you don't make the moves necessary, because if they keep going with this team, they're nowhere near a championship unless Markel Fultz turns into LeBron over the offseason, and they're nowhere near a good pick. So you're going to have to do an extremely good job in the draft or hit on a big time free agent. And I have not seen anything that would give me hope of either of those two things. So I agree with Riv. I would just blow it up. I do actually think they have some nice young pieces. You guys named a couple of them. Obviously, Markel Fultz, Cole Anthony, Mo Bamba, John Isaac when he comes back from the injury. Another guy, Chuma Okeke from Auburn. He was a part of that, national championship close run for Auburn.
Play with Isaac Okoro.
Yeah, I think he has some nice potential, although he's coming off an injury. So we have to see how he returns to basketball form. I think they have some nice young pieces, but right now their team, one, didn't get any better, and two, doesn't fit the mold of the NBA. They were the worst shooting team from the 3-point line in the league last year. So, they're just stuck. And I think the only way to get out of that is to unstuck yourself by trading Vucevic, trade Ross, trade Fournier, get what you can for him, and build up some young talent, and then use those assets to go get stars. And then you make yourself a destination down at Orlando next to Walt Disney World. You have the sales pitch, but you got to tear it down and build it back up. And that's my take on them.
See, in my opinion, I think the starting lineup isn't bad. You got Markel Fultz, Fournier, Dwayne Bacon's probably going to start, Aaron Gordon, Vucevic. It's not a bad team. They can be competitive. And off the bench, Terrence Ross is there. You got Cole Anthony, Mo Bamba. We're hoping that Mo Bamba develops into something even better than, Vucevic, to be honest, because he was a top 5 pick. I'm pretty sure he was a top 5 pick. So he's supposed to be that future centerpiece, but right now to this point, it's looking like they whiffed on that pick. So I mean, the Magic, I have them finishing with the 10th seed this season. I can see them as high as 8. I can see them sneaking into the playoffs if things go right, but I can also see them being as low as 11 or as low as 12 as well.
I have them in the play-in. I don't see them getting the 8th seed unless something magical happens, like Indiana forms out, or the team I have at 7 forms out. But I have them in the play-in, maybe a seed under, but I just don't see. I think Jonathan Isaac. I think they were like 28th. I think they were like 28th in defense last year. They weren't that good defensively, and Jonathan Isaac was on the team. So I think losing him drops you immensely because he can guard 1 through 5 literally. He can guard down low. He can guard at the perimeter. He's going to get you the steals. He's going to get you the blocks. He's easily a top 10 defender in the league. So losing him is going to be really, really huge. So I think this team is going to have some trouble defending. And like you said, they're the worst shooting team in the league. So I don't know their direction. They don't really have a go-to, like outside of Vucevic, who's like a back-to-basket type of big. He can shoot though, but he's more old school. They don't have a go-to scorer on the perimeter. They have a young guys on the perimeter. You're relying on a rookie to come off the bench who wasn't known as a playmaker and was a pretty inefficient scorer at UNC. So you're relying on that guy to really turn it up. So it's going to be tough to see, man.
Yeah, I have them finishing at 10 this season. I could see them sneaking up to potentially even 7 if things go really well and that young talent pans out. But I could see them falling all the way to worst case scenario 11 or maybe 12. But I think they're solid at 10. They're in that second tier, towards the bottom of that second tier for me, right at 10, where I had them. I could see 2 or 3 teams potentially jumping them, but I'll get to those later. But I just don't like the spot they're in. You look at where they're going to end up. Say they get the 8 seed or they win the play-in game and they sneak into the playoffs. How do they compete with the Bucks, Celtics, Nets, Heat, Sixers, Raptors? I just don't see that. So it's just a bad spot for them right now.